Well, hello, and welcome to the Three Addict Network. We're live, and it's time for some holiday tales. I'm hoping that this stream finds you in some good spirits, and that you are as ready as I am to check out some Christmas stories. Let's see, my day's been pretty darn good so far. I got up, I stretched, let my dog out, and ate some delicious, delicious eggs. um, and now I appear before you today. I wanted to share with you guys before we get started. Got it. A couple of art pieces that I've been working on over the past couple of days here, in preparation for a little D&D one shot that I am preparing for my family for Christmas Day. Let's see. The first one is Taffeta Twill Esther. And this will be the one for my mom. She's pretty cool. She's going to be a halfling rogue. Next up, we got... Let's see, I believe this was Tanner Puzzle Plush. He's going to be a drummer bard. Pretty happy with this one. It's looking pretty slick. I think I want to clean up the lines on the face a little bit, but look at him go. Whoa! And that'll be for my brother's friend and my sister's boyfriend. And this one's pretty sweet. This is Gingham Folder Fire. This one's from my brother. Pretty sweet, right? He's gonna be a bard as well, but he will be a singing, lyre-playing bard. Pretty darn happy with how this one turned out. Next up, we got the one from my dad. This is Pladley Folder Fire, the father of Gingham. He's going to be a cleric, a wood elf cleric. Then lastly, I'm quite proud of this one too. I think my brothers and sisters, I was most happy with how they came out. This is Polly Esther. She is going to be a halfling druid, I believe. Pretty darn sweet though, right? I think it looks a whole heck of a lot like her too. One for my brother and sister. I think I got their likenesses down quite well. But yeah, those will be for the little Christmas D&D session that I've been planning for both I and my family. To be a pretty cool time. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and check out these Christmas stories. We came across these last time. Towards the end of this session, I decided to look into a couple of, whether or not Tor had a few original fiction Christmas tales. And lo and behold, there were two that I had found. The first one Father Christmas, A Wonder Tale of the North. And the second, The Ghosts of Christmas. This one by Paul Cornell, the other by Charles Vess. I hope you'll join me in checking out these wintertime stories. Now, I'll need to pause the pleasant jams and switch it over to a little bit of ambiance. As always, the ambience will be brought to us by Tabletop Audio. Super sweet, most excellent website that has all sorts of good tracks to put behind stories. Let's see. All right, I'm thinking this will be the one we go with. Make sure my voice mod is actually on this time. Okay, good. It is. All right, without further ado, let's jump in. This is Father Christmas, A Wonder Tale of the North by Charles Vess. Chapter 1. Many years ago, when magic was as real as the breeze against your face, Father Christmas lived with his 12 beautiful daughters and one handsome son-in-law. Rambling house by a great forest. When the wind howled down from the north, as it almost always did during 9 months of each year, they were thankful for the high ridge of stone that stood protectively between their home and the great forest beyond. The only sorrow in his children's lives was that they had no mother, no smiling face to sing to them to sleep at night, no kind hand to wipe away their tears. In the short northern summer, when the wind sighed softly through the trees, or when they heard the murmur of water tumbling over rocks in the nearby stream, they would imagine it was their mother's voice. When they asked Father Christmas where their mother might be, he grew sad and would tell them that long ago she'd been forced to leave them. Yet he never told them why. But I know. Would you like me to tell you? Listen, and I will. Nicholas, for that was Father Christmas's given name, was orphaned when he was 3 years old. After that tragedy, he was raised by all the families who lived in his small village, which is the same village where you and your mothers and your fathers live today. As he grew older and taller and stronger, he became the best hunter the village had ever seen. He always returned from a long day spent in field or forest with a deer or a string of rabbits hung from his broad shoulders. and he shared that meat with any who were hungry. When the snow was too deep or the wind too strong for hunting, he spent his days learning other skills from the village carpenter. Soon Nicholas could carve or build anything that could be made from wood, and his skill grew very great indeed. Then, one midsummer's night, when sunset caught Nicholas deep in the wild wood in search of fresh game, he saw a vision that made everything he had ever seen before seem like nothing to him. It was a young woman, beautiful beyond compare, who rode on the broad back of a great snow bear through a cascade of soft moonlight. Nicholas chased after the vision as any hunter would pursue his quarry. All night he ran past waterfalls and lakes, mountains and valleys. Always she remained far, far ahead, until, come the brightening of dawn, she simply vanished. Desolate, he returned home and fell exhausted into bed. He awoke from that sleep, still seized with a great longing to see the beautiful maiden once more. His dreams had been haunted by her beauty, and Nicholas felt he could not rest till he had done so. In those days, his hair was as black as the space between two stars, and his belt did not need as many notches as it does today. I have been told that young Nicholas possessed a fine, handsome figure, and on his well-featured face was a bright smile that lit his eyes and creased his ruddy cheeks. Many were the comely women, many were the comely young women in our village then who had cast themselves at him, but Nicholas would return nothing except kindness for their efforts, for none stirred his heart as the forest maiden had. Night after night after night, he returned to the forest, but found nothing in that wild tangle of undergrowth and immense trees but his own hunger to see the beautiful maiden once more. Long months passed in that manner, until the ancient wise woman of his village saw that he had begun to waste away. He, who had once been the proudest and strongest of all the village's hunters, was now pale and thin. Taking pity on him, the wise woman invited Nicholas into her cottage, and there told him a tale older than even she. In the midst of the great forest there lives a race of trolls. Savage they are, as well as superb hunters. I fear that they, like us humans, not at all. We have ever done whatever we could to rid ourselves of their kind. The Troll King and his Queen are the most terrifying of that great and awful race. It has been told to me by one who knows the truth of these things that they have but one daughter, and she, through some alchemy known only to troll kind, is as beautiful as the flowers in spring. It was she whom you saw. It was she who has enchanted you so. Many have thought they loved this maiden. Many have sought her. and many more have died trying to claim her for their own. But if you truly love the Troll King's daughter, then you must not track and hunt her as if she were some common animal. You must woo her with gifts and with flowers. You must whisper soft words and gentle poetry in her ear. You must build for her a bower of street meadow grasses, and fill the trees about it with every manner of bird, so that their song will grace your house spent there with her. Then she may listen to you. Then perhaps she may return your love. The very next morning, when he again stood before the great woods, Nicholas pondered all that had been said to him by the wise woman. Yet also he remembered the tales that he had heard around every fire over the long winter nights here in the North Country. Those stories were filled to overflowing with the savagery of trollkind. He knew that it was dangerous indeed to seek those creatures in the midst of their deep, deep forest. For those who did so seldom returned to tell their tale. Still, Nicholas laid his spear and his bow and his quiver of arrows in the long grasses at his feet. And lastly, he grasped his hunting blade and held it for long moments before placing it, too, beside the others. Then, with only love in his heart and unafraid, he entered the great forest. Now, the palace of the Troll King is set so deep in the deepest fold of that wood that it took more hours than that midsummer's day had to offer for Nicholas to reach it. So, when finally he beheld that terrible place, that terrible palace, many days and dark nights had passed, and above him, through the looming trees, the sky was touched with color, red, pink, and gold, that trumpeted the fast approach of yet another night. Before him, the palace of the Troll King looked for all the world like a great tumble of tall gray stones, blanketed with a deep green carpet of moss, which in its turn was covered in a panoply of delicate flowers of every hue and color. And set upon the summit of those stones was a great oak tree that looked down over the forest below it. Silently, so silently, as fading day became true night, Nicholas crept to the entrance of that strange palace of stone and of moss. But before he could step into the dark passageway that led within, a dozen troll maidens danced past him, tripping lightly over the now moonlit path. And Nicholas was well pleased, for as their head was the maiden he had sought for so long. But his heart quaked, but his heart quaked when he saw the fearsome troll guards who followed closely behind her. For the king and queen's only daughter was always carefully guarded wherever she would go. Even knowing the danger, Nicholas still stepped boldly forth and, in sight of all, fell to his knees. The Troll King's daughter looked down at the strange human who knelt before her and saw that he had no spear in hand, or bow strung over his back, or hunting knife close by his side, as so many other hunters had hung about their bodies during their vain efforts to trap or possess her. This man simply looked up and spoke words of poetry from his heart that gently wrapped themselves around her own, ensnaring it more firmly than any hunting net ever could. Then and there, she fell finally and completely in love with her strange human suitor. Before Nessa's guards, for that was the princess's true name, could impale her love on their sharp, sharp pikes, the maid snatched him up, tucked him under her arm, and leapt away, disappearing into the vastness of that vast forest. Oh, the strides she made, miles and miles with every single leap. If she had possessed the fabled 7-league boots, she could not have gone as far or as quickly. Soon, far, far away, beside a sweet flowing stream, they finally stood alone and gazed into each other's eyes, and then solemnly swore to be true to each other as long as they both should live. But because a troll cannot endure the sun's light, and will, as surely as night follows day, turn to stone under it, they could only spend every moment of each short summer night sleeping in the tall meadow grass in each other's arms. On many of those nights, the merry dancers would glide and flicker in the sky above them, sending soft cascades of rainbow colors across their tangled bodies. During the day, as his bride slept safely under the ground, Nicholas built for himself Nicholas built for himself a small birch bark hut, topped by bowers of spruce and carpeted with moss, and slept there through each long summer day. His only thought was to bide there, waiting for the fall of night, so that he and his bride could be together once more. And in that way, they lived by themselves, and were happy for many, many years. Chapter 2. Every night that Nicholas and his bride spent together in their meadow was made sweet with the fragrance of pine and cedar and of spruce, and Nessa filled their table with all manner of food gathered from the forest as only a troll knows how to find. And secretly, because she loved him very much, with each meal she piled Nicholas's drink with a certain potion made with ancient troll magic and a wisp of moonlight. So each new day, he awoke taller and stronger and broader than any human who ever lived here in the north. In time, a son was born to them. The boy was as smiling and as pleasant as both his parents. To protect the child, his proud father began to enlarge the small hut, and had soon fashioned another room from the boughs of the trees that surrounded them, and carpeted it with thick green moss. Nicholas's only sadness then was that no matter how much wood he cut and split and carved, or how cleverly he bent and shaped that wood, his home could never be a shelter for his troll wife from the sun's awful purpose. Nessa chose to name their son Jump at the Sun, but Nicholas liked to call him Geordie. Nurtured by his parents' love, the boy grew quickly, and soon a jumble of curling black hair fell down across his small shoulders, and his tiny arms hardened with muscle. Geordie loved both his parents, and his life in the greenwood with them. But sometimes, when they slept, he sat by himself in the grass by the stream, blowing sharp sounds from between long blades of grass caught up in his hands. And he grew lonely. Then came a day when his father slept longer than was his wont. Restless, the boy followed a beautiful bird that called to him with a sweet, sweet song far into the forest. When at last he stumbled to a stop in a small meadow thick with wild flowers, Geordie looked about him and knew that he was lost. Of the bird that had led him hither, there was no sign. Neither did its brightening notes linger gracefully in the air. Later, when Nicholas awoke, he could not find his son. He spent all the hours of that long summer's day frantically searching for the boy, but without success. Come the night, though, when his wife arose, she immediately suspected what had come to pass. Nessa smiled grimly, then to her husband and spoke. "You must stay here, for where I go now is forbidden to any that are human." No matter how difficult the thought of doing nothing was to him, Nicholas, being a wise man, could only accept the truth in his wife's words. Soon, in a vast cavern, so far underground that the light from our sun had never been known there, Nessa found, as she had expected she would, her son, sleeping peacefully in the lap of her own mother, the queen. A dozen armored trolls, huge creatures with their bows drawn and at the ready, guarded their queen and the small boy in her lap. Hmm. Hmm. Daughter, did you think you would hide from me forever? I will not even speak of this husband of yours, for he is a human, and therefore of no consequence to me. But your child here will be a prince of our kingdom, and should be raised as its court, where he rightfully belongs. Never. Hmm. So you say. Nessa had not come there to wage war on her own kind, but to plead for the return of her son, Geordie. In that darkness, we will never know how long she begged and pleaded and cried, but in the fullness of time, her tears began to fill that vast cavern, and standing there in that great and overwhelming pool, her mother, the Queen of Trolls, gave in to her daughter's wishes at last. Hmm. Very well then. And extending her thick, hairy arms across the pool, made from all the tears that Nessa had shed, the Queen Mother of Trolls gave Geordie back to Nessa. But know this, daughter. As long as you live, the child may stay with you and his father. But when you have passed, the boy will then come to live with me. For what does a man know of raising a child? No, the princess knew that trolls live for a very long time indeed, and so was well satisfied with her bargain. She took Geordie, then ran back through the darkness of stone and earth to the surface of our world, and there continued to stride on her great legs, straight back through the limitless forest, back to her home in the forest glade. This would, in fact, be the one, the only, Mary Mitch. Good to have you, Randy. I'm glad you made it. So far, we're reading a tale about Saint Nicholas, but this is one set in a fantasy setting where his origins came from his uh, desire to be with a troll princess who was incredibly beautiful and was a lady he just had to have. And so he came to her, was like, "Oh, yo, I'm I'm Saint Nicholas. Uh, be with me. I love you." and since um and since Saint Nicholas didn't bring any weapons to the palace of the Troll King, uh, this was the first time that had happened apparently, because most had gone there to seek the hand of the troll princess Nessa, but had come with weapons in case the other trolls attacked. But St. Nicholas came in there, no weapons on hand, got on his knees and started spitting poetry. And she was like, "Dang, I'm a take this one." and so she lifted him up before the other trolls had a chance to strike, and they ran off and became wed. But trolls turned to stone in the day, which I think is something that actually comes from mythology. I don't know which mythology it comes from, but I think that is because I've seen that in other works before. If anybody's seen Hilda, the Netflix original animation, the trolls in that are literally made of stone. So I think like trolls and stone is connected somehow in ancient mythology. Might be worth looking up. Maybe after we read the story here. I don't think it's talking about that is what does that mean, Randy? What is I'm remiss to you to say it before I know what that insinuates. Regardless though, I don't think it's talking about that. The real Saint Nick is the patron saint of kids and stuff. No, this is a fantasy tale about Nicholas and like Father Christmas's origins. Oh man. Is that real? Is that actually in the history of like the real Saint Nicholas? You're kidding me. Dude. I thought you were just kind of making stuff up on the fly as jokes. Not gonna lie to you. Goodness. Yeah, no, this is not the real tale of Saint Nick where he left gold coins in stockings of little girls so they wouldn't have to turn to to a brothel. Um and then found dead kids in a pickle barrel, which apparently, so says Randy, is the real history of Saint. Let me say that again. Saint Nicholas. No, this one as I was summarizing is about his love affair with the princess of the trolls. You were given a Christmas pickle as a kid because of that? Was it because of that, or it's like the legend in the Bible where he apparently turns the pickled boys back to life? What? I do I do know that there is a yodeling pickle on Amazon, and that's specifically from the JonTron episode of strange things he bought online. I just remember uh the review under it about how somebody gave the yodeling pickle to their grandfather who had Alzheimer's, and uh, the review was 5 stars because the grandfather loved the yodeling pickle because he would get really upset about something, and then they would slip the yodeling pickle into his pocket, and it would start to yodel, and he'd find it in his pocket and start just like laughing hysterically at the yodeling pickle, wondering how it got into his pocket, and forget about whatever it was he was upset about. Emerald, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. This is the story of Nicholas. Man, who would have guessed that the true story of Saint Nicholas, or supposedly true account of Saint Nicholas, would be far wilder than Saint Nicholas becoming buff as heck, um, than going to find a troll princess in the deep dark woods and marrying her and having a son. Who would have guessed that the real account of who Saint Nicholas was would be stranger than the fantasy, the fiction on Tor.com. Yeah, yeah, I feel you there. And I don't know, I would have to look at the actual text myself and probably come to my own conclusion, but uh and to be fair, I haven't read the whole thing myself, but I don't remember being told about no pickled kids in Sunday school. Remy. Sorry, we got off on a bit of a tangent. Yeah, I mean that's probably that seems reasonable. I know Russians don't have Saint Nicholas, and they used a different Father Christmas type character. Huh. Yeah, they probably saw that. Well, I don't even know. The pickle barrel always leads to a great tangent. He has a somewhat sketchy relationship with a the young woman. Oh, Saint Nicholas or the Russian Father Christmas? Dude, what? Tell me why I'm. DMs, keep this in mind for your next session. For real, I gotta say, a pickle barrel. What, dude? What about a pickle barrel mimic? Huh? That has that has that has dead bodies inside of it. Oh God. I guess that would make sense. The mimic had eaten the people. His name sounds like Dead Morris or something. Honestly, yeah, right, Randy. that's that's not a bad idea. Even just the concept of having a mimic have that within its form, like its past victims haven't been fully digested or something. So when the heroes defeat it, they're met with Ugh. The body's inside. You could, and you could have it be related to, the place that they were staying at. Maybe it's like some of the people, some of the other adventurers they met along the way. Pickle barrel mimic. Hey, all right, hear me out. Pickle barrel mimic. It could have like a bag of holding inside to explain how it keeps so many of them. Oh gosh. I do know that there is a bag of devouring, I think, that is kind of like a mimic itself mixed with a bag of holding. That's an actual item in D&D. It could be a cool Children of the File scenario. Oh, Children of the Fly scenario. Oop. Ah. Where the kids were alive and formed factions inside the pickle mimic, and the party can release them. This just gets better and better. Honestly, that is something else. Where it does have sort of this like pocket dimension within itself, and so the kids that it devoured didn't actually die, but they have formed their own like society within the the pickle mimic barrel. Lord of the Flies. Yeah, I assumed as much. Goodness, man, some good stuff. I will say I feel like I probably can't include that in my in my upcoming one shot with my family. Mostly just because it doesn't exactly correlate to the story. Not sure where I'd fit that in. Can't I'm not sure if I could just plop a pickle barrel mimic next to JC in the manger. Oh gosh. Oh no. And just have it be there, but if they just pay it no mind, like just mention it offhand, if they pay it no mind, they just continue on and nothing to see. Oh, true, dude. That's right. We got pickle barrels in the Bible. What am I thinking? Oh man. Well, okay. I let's say we continue on in this here Nicholas Father Christmas tale. To catch you up, their son, what was it? I want to say Jumbo, but that's not it. Jordy. Definitely not. The son's name is not Jumbo. um. So, anyways, Jumbo runs away from home, and I'm just kidding. Jordy runs away from home, finds his way back to the Troll King's palace, and ends up in the lap of uh, Nessa's mother, the queen, the Troll Queen. And the Troll Queen is like, "You married a human? The heck? That's dumb. We're gonna raise this child here in the Troll Dome, and that's final." And then Nessa cries so hard and so long that she almost floods the cavern or forms like a legitimate pool of tears. And the mother is like, okay, oh gosh, okay, all right, fine. Listen, as long as you're alive, Jumbo can stay with you guys. I did it again. Jordy can stay with you guys. Um, but as soon as you pass on, as soon as you die, Nessa, Jordy will come back to live with us. All right. But night began to fade to light then, and just as she had reached the pleasant meadow that Nicholas and she had shared for so long, the sun began to rise. As its light spilled over the forest beyond and the glade around her, she handed the boy to Nicholas, and unable to find shelter, Nessa was transformed then into an immense mountain of stone. And children, I tell you now, there she lies to this very day, a craggy mountain ridge that circles protectively around the home of Nicholas and their son. I see the looks of disbelief. You've but to look out the window there, and you will see that mountain for yourself. Yes, that very one. With the 3 fine spruce trees topping it. I'm serious. Here, look. Check it out. Right out the window there. No, I'm just kidding. Even so, let me continue. Weeping at his loss, Nicholas cradled the boy in his arms. Later, when his tears had at least ceased to flow and his eyes had cleared, he saw that around Geordie's neck was a soft leather bag. In it he found 12 tiny pebbles, worn smooth by time, each cut by delicate marks of red and green and blue. Unknown to Nicholas, these stones were infused with the strongest of all troll magic. But when Geordie finally woke and found his mother gone, he became desolate and began to cry and wail, never ceasing through night and day, day after day. And try as he might, Nicholas could find no means to comfort his son. So, in his misery, he laid the boy in his cradle, thick with sweet grasses, and, sitting it by its side, picked up a fallen branch and began to carve upon it. Day and night he carved, for 9 months and a day, without food or sleep. And as the wood shavings piled around him on the floor, figures began to appear out of the rough wood logs that he held in his hand. Crude at the first, each gained refinement with every new figure that he completed, till at last there were 12 small wooden figures with flowing gowns and smiling faces, gathered round about the still wailing infant. Looking then at his wooden sisters, Geordie's sorrow eased, and for the first time since his mother's death, he grew silent, and a slow smile of happiness spread across his small face. Looking down at his son, now happily clutching the wooden figures, Nicholas reached into the leather pouch that still hung round the boy's neck, and pulled from it the 12 pebbles that were within it. One each for Geordie's sisters, made from wood. And he hung them then, one by one, around the shoulders of the carved figures. The silence that settled then over Nicholas's home was pleasant indeed. And with its coming, both he and his son fell into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. Hours or days or weeks later, they were awakened by the sound of merry laughter and the tread of light feet all around them both. When he looked up, Nicholas saw the 12 carved figures were now 12 young maidens, made of flesh and blood. Bewildered, he asked, "How can this be?" The tallest of the girls gave him a warm smile. "Why, father, you wrought us from the oak and the ashes and the thorn, and after, our mother's magic brought us to life." "But you are so many. Where will you stay?" "My house is small and very humble." His daughters laughed as one and gestured around them. The house had become so infused with the cunning troll magic that it had shaped itself anew while Nicholas and his son slept. Where once there had been but 2 rooms, now there were bedrooms for all who lived there under its roof. There were also warm hallways and sewing rooms and a lovely workspace for Nicholas himself. And best of all, there was a long kitchen table in the middle of a cozy kitchen, big enough for them to all sit and eat. You know what's you know what's coming to mind right now? I keep seeing one of those like house flippers um like TLC shows or whatever the channel is for them, where the two people come in and they try to figure out how to make a house better in order to sell for a profit. um and I just imagine like the homeowners are walking around and they're like, yeah, so we're wanting to switch up this hallway so that it's longer, a little bit warmer. We're wanting to paint the walls a deeper red color. We want to, uh, tear down this wall and make this into a little workspace. Maybe have a few tables, some tools hanging about the walls. I want, I think about 12 bedrooms, so there's going to be a little bit of expansion needed. And the house flipper is just sitting there like, okay, all right, okay, all right. So here's the thing: we're gonna need a troll princess, to save her son, and then die by the sun's rise. We're gonna need 12 troll beads infused with the strongest of troll magic, and then we're gonna need the father who's distraught by the troll princess's death, and the son, both to be really sad for about 9 months, and then during those 9 months have the yeah have the father uh carve some daughters onto this wooden cradle thing that the boy is in, just wailing and crying. Then after those 9 months, poof, booyah, pop those suckers in to the carving, and voila, you'll have yourself a brand new house worth millions. In time, they discovered that their home grew or shrank according to their every need, adding or subtracting rooms and hallways, doors and storage closets, windows and beds as their usefulness came and went. In that manner, there was never more to clean up or put away than was ever absolutely necessary. This is a dream house, without a doubt. My goodness. Delighted with his new home and his 12 beautiful daughters, who looked back at him with such love, and also then, with his happy, laughing son, Nicholas threw off the grief that had settled over him for so long. In that very hour, he chose names for his daughters, one for each month of the year, and they were January, Morning Star; February, Alder; March, Fern; April, Joy; May, Mayberry; June, apple, and her cheeks just as red as her namesake. July, rosemary. August, lily. September, rowan. October, butternut. November, mistletoe. And the oldest, December, hollyberry. They lived together with great happiness for 9 years, and his 12 daughters laid claim to what room was left in his heart after his love for his true son Geordie, and glad was he of them all. But a troll's memory is long, and their bargains are never forgotten. And although a day may pass where a human lives, although a day may pass here where we humans live, it is but the blink of an eye to troll kind. So with the quick passing of those years, the Queen Mother of all trolls began to consider the bargain she had made with her daughter, and what she might do about it. I was about to ask. 9 years are passing, and the Troll Queen hasn't come to snag Jumbo? What's up with that? All right. Let me grab a sip of water, and then we will jump into chapter 3. I will say, I'm enjoying this little romp into this story so far. It certainly reminds me of uh, the way most fairy tales are written, where some things, don't exactly make sense, but are uh, taken as normal. Oh, what's on my sweater? Hold up. Thanks for asking. Bow. Check it out. Wait, this way. Dinosaurs. I do like this guy in particular. See, check him out. Actually, I can grab you. Oh, check him out. He's got a little reindeer nose. This guy in the front too. A little Jurassic Christmas. Fantastic Jurassic. I know. I wish I could have it visible while I read. I guess I'd have to just do this. Attach it to like my glasses or something. Here, how about this? All right, chapter 3. Hush now, children, hush. Listen carefully. I don't. I was surprised that that even worked at all. Honestly. It turns out that I can actually see through the sweater that way, but just barely. Just barely. And then I dig how the pattern looks when it's rolled up. It's quite nice. Something about like a knitted sweater. It's pleasant, you know? It's cozy. Cozy, comforting, casual. All right. Well, into the next chapter, shall we? Chapter 3. Hush now, children, hush. Listen carefully, or you will never know how young Nicholas became your beloved Father Christmas, will you? Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Hang on, I can do that better. Hush now, children, hush. Listen carefully, or you will never know how young Nicholas became your beloved Father Christmas, will you? Now then, where was I? Oh, yes. That very next night, in the absolute dark of the very dark evening, a booming crash thundered through Nicholas's quiet household, followed quickly by many more. The stout oak front door shook loose from its hinges and fell to the floor with a great, heavy crash. With a whistling blast of icy wind, a huge misshapen head, covered in long greasy hair, thrust its way through the opening, and the face that looked then at Nicholas was split with a huge, toothy, satisfied grin. The Troll Queen had come to visit her grandson. As she spoke, all the shutters flew from the windows in the room. Actually, I suppose maybe a voice changer would be appropriate here. Let's pull it up, see what we got.
Let's see. How about this one? This one? See, it's like some crazy troll magic. So, this one? No. This one? Pitched down. So you are Nicholas. So you are Nicholas. So you are Nicholas. No, not the ghosts. So you are Nicholas. Yeah. Alright, let's go with this one. So you are Nicholas. What did my Nessa see in you? I wonder.
With little to no effort, the queen shifted her great body further into his front parlor. Her knees banged against the ceiling, and her broad shoulders thrust against either wall, threatening to burst them apart.
Your wife and I had a bargain. I kept my part of it. And now I've come this night for what is rightfully mine.
Before Nicholas could answer, fear began to wrap itself around his stout heart. Queen, I say to you now, nothing of mine will ever be yours. Queen, I say to you now, nothing of mine will ever be yours. Goodness. I feel as though I'm struggling with the voices today. You know, that's how it be, though. Some days, more on point than others. Hmm. Queen, I say to you now, nothing of mine will ever be yours. Nothing of mine will ever be yours. Will ever be yours.
But it was agreed between my daughter and me. Nessa gave me her word that on her death, the boy Geordie would come to live among his true family.
Pulling himself up straight and tall, flushed with all of his considerable strength, Nicholas spoke. You must pass through me first then, monster! Let's see if I can do that again. You must pass through me first then, monster! Ho, ho, ho.
Indeed. Let me get a better look at you then.
But just as it was with his bride, the magic of that house, though very great indeed, could not accommodate the queen's massive body. Craning her neck to look more closely at young Nicholas, her shoulders splintered two great beams that held the cottage's ceiling aloft, showering thatch down upon them both.
Yes, you have grown since I last saw you. But how? But come, you must know that living here by yourself in these great woods, the boy would be lonely. Would he not? I promise you that your Geordie will be a prince in the kingdom of trolls, and that his life in my court will be filled with laughter.
Before Nicholas could reply, 12 young girls peeked from behind the inner door and laughed and stared wide-eyed at the giant troll crouching in their well-kept parlor. Morningstar, the youngest, held the little Geordie in her arms. When the queen shifted her head to consider these unexpected intruders, she shattered 2 chairs and a table, and all the fine china plates that the table had held.
Who might these children be then?
Nicholas, his arms spread wide, gathered his daughters to his side. As you say, a growing boy needs a sister to take care of him. My son has 12. The queen snorted in surprise, sending the delicate lace curtains laid across each window flying across the room.
Well, then we have much to discuss, do we not? But I fear that your poor home will be the worst for it if I stay here a moment longer. Bring your son and his devoted sisters outside, where there is room enough for me to breathe, and we will talk more of this bargain.
Outside, the night was very dark indeed. The snow fell thick and fast. Hard against the great rock that protected the cottage was the queen's enormous sleigh, already filled with snow. Not even brushing it aside, she settled onto the plush seat of her curious carriage, for it had no visible means to propel it. With her back braced against the great hard rock, the Troll Queen looked down then at her grandson as he played in Nicholas's broad lap and smiled at her 12 granddaughters before she asked,
Now then, where did these charming young ladies come from?
I feel as though the voice FX is cool, but it might be a little too intense for the character. Oh well, it's committed now. That is the voice of the Troll Queen. And he had named them all. After he had named them all, Nicholas smiled proudly at his daughters and said only, "They were a gift from my wife to her son and myself, and they have filled our life here with joy and laughter since she left us." They were a gift from my wife to her son and myself, and they have filled our lives here with joy and laughter since she left us. But when the queen noticed that each of Nicholas's daughters wore a certain stone strung round her neck, she began to understand more than she had been told. For every troll born knows the power of those particular stones, and the queen knew more than most. So, slyly, she wrinkled her nose and asked that he return to his cottage.
I smell a wedge of fine cheese that waits in your kitchen, do I not? And Nicholas, the cold of this night makes my empty belly groan so for something to fill it.
Wishing to appease the huge troll queen, Nicholas gave Geordie into the care of his oldest daughter, Hollyberry, and went to do as he had been bidden, with a heart filled only with gladness and cheer. He would not have thought that the others could, or even would, take advantage of him for it. But when Nicholas returned, balancing a platter piled high with cheese and bread, he saw the sleigh that had brought the Queen of Trolls with it, rising slowly into the snowy night. The Queen Mother of Trolls called back down to him.
Stupid man! A trusting heart is a weakness that can always be taken advantage of.
With one great arm, the Queen cradled the screaming boy, and in the other she clutched 12 leather strings, from which dangled 12 curious stones. Then strewn across the snowy ground at Nicholas's feet, where his daughters turned now to wood once more. As the sleigh hovered above him, just out of reach, the Queen laughed down at Nicholas.
My grandson is too precious for wooden companions such as those.
Suddenly, Geordie, tucked under her arm, lunged forward, and he bit deeply into one of the huge troll's thick, hairy fingers. The Queen screamed then, such a scream that sent the snow swirling far to either side of her sleigh. And with that scream, one precious stone tumbled loose from her grip and fell down and down, end over end, to land on the breast of one single wooden carving beneath her. Morning Star blinked once and sat up. Her father caught her safely up in his strong arms, and they both turned their faces back up to the sky. But already, the Troll Queen and her sleigh had disappeared into the swirling, snow-filled sky. Bum, bum, bow, wow. Goodness. Some wild developments in this here story. The reason I was questioning the voice FX was because I was kind of expecting the Troll Queen to be like, oh, yo, he's got, you mean to tell me he has a family here? That he's surrounded by love and joy and happiness? All right, cool. You know, Saint, or sorry, excuse me, not Saint, Mr. Nicholas, you keep Jumbo there. He's good with you, I think. And I thought it was gonna just be like, it turns out that the mother troll is actually a nice lady, but nope. It turned out that she just deactivated all of the wooden constructs and then flew off with Geordie. I do really dig those sorts of names though. Jump at the Sun. In D&D, a lot of Tabaxi, that race, have names such as that, where it is simply like either a phrase that describes an action or a time of year, but it is simply like basically just a short sentence that is their name. End of winter, brittle dust, um, running to the sea, uh, leaves that fall. It can be anything like that. And I find those names to be kind of beautiful. All right. Chapter 4. Devastated by their loss, Nicholas and his daughter looked at one another for a moment, and then, without words, for no words were needed, busied themselves with preparations for a long journey through swirling snow and dark forest to rescue what had been taken from them. Morningstar lovingly gathered her elven wooden sisters out of the snow where they had fallen, and gently packed them between straw and moss in a cloth satchel that she swung from her shoulder. Nicholas quickly fashioned rough wooden skis for them both, so that no matter the depth of the snow and ice under their feet, they would be able to glide over it. But even so, the midwinter's night through which they traveled was long and dark indeed. The snow fell and fell and fell until it became so deep that the grass that carpeted the forest floor beneath it seemed but a distant memory. To light their way in that utter darkness, Morningstar, true to her name, illuminated the dense forest of towering trees so that they were able to begin before first light and continue on even as darkness again swiftly followed. For it was midwinter in the Northland, and as you children well know, the days then are done almost before they begin. At last, another long night gradually gave way to a bleaker morning. The blizzard finally ceased, and now, around them, they saw only black, snow-etched boles of towering pine and spruce and cedar that marched endlessly away in every direction. Nowhere was there a landmark that was familiar to Nicholas. All was covered deep and deep with winter snow. No outcrop of stone or lightning burned tree to mark their path. There was nothing to show him the path that they needed to take. For his Nessa had carried him many long leagues from the kingdom of trolls, and the land where humans lived was further even still. I can tell you now that endless forest weighed at their hearts and wore away at whatever hope remained in their hearts. But then, far and far away, so far that it seemed but a pleasant dream they both shared, Nicholas and his daughter Morningstar saw a faint pink light the sky before them, and both then breathed a little easier, and their strength was restored. Deep then within that dim forest, they began to hear the howling of many wolves, followed by the bellow of a great elk or a stag. And Nicholas turned to his daughter and said, Though our need is great, the stag's need is greater still. Though our need is great, the stag's need is greater still. The stag's need is greater still. Morning Star, out of the goodness of her pure heart, smiled at her father and said, "Then let us do what we must." Carefully, they crept through those trees, and the fighting below of that great stag came ever closer and closer. And with it also came the savage cries of a multitude of wolves. Then, just before them, they beheld the elk, for the elk it was, its hot breath steaming into the frosty air, surrounded by wolves beyond counting. Without hesitation, Nicholas charged among them and swung his great double-sided axe with both his hands. The snarling wolves bounded away from their prey, but only for a moment, for their hunger gave them fell purpose. They turned as one and leapt upon Nicholas's great form, tearing at his clothes and at his flesh. The great elk lunged amongst them and impaled one, two, three, and a fourth beast with its long antlers. Soon, blood began to stain the snow at their feet and at the stag's hooves. But clever Morning Star, knowing that sometimes even great strength, guided by a valiant heart, cannot overcome all that there is to overcome, walked softly among them, and stood in the midst of those heaving bodies that churned the bloody snow. And she smiled. Far above her, through the dense boughs of the great trees, she saw the first star of evening glow softly in the darkening sky, and she raised her arms in supplication towards it. Her namesake must have smiled down upon the small figure below it, for the great star seemed to lend her strength and purpose with its light. For then Morning Star's soft glow became a brilliant, searing light that etched the forest around them, and the trampled snow, and the great stag, and the valiant man who still struggled in the midst of a swirling mass of fur and claw and teeth. That harsh white light shone forth from her brow and served to drive those beasts away, sending them howling back into the depths of that cruel forest. The elk spoke to them. "Friends, I thank you for your service to me. I fear I would have been the worse for it if you had not come to my aid." Morning Star spoke for both her father, and herself. "Sir, what would we be if we did not help those in need? It would not be fitting if we were like unto those simple beasts that even now fled, with only hunger in our thoughts and blood on our hands." With great dignity, then, the great elk bowed his head toward them both and gave his thanks. Then it spoke once again. "What has brought you so far from any of your kind? What seek you here so deep in my forest?" Nicholas looked kindly at the elk and began to explain their urgent task. As it listened to the tale, the elk lowered its great antlers into the snow by their side and cleansed the blood from off them. Then, raising its head once more, It looked at them both, and large and sorrowful were its eyes. My heart is saddened that Princess Nessa no longer walks amongst us. Unlike so many of her kin, she was always wont to show kindness to all who came to her. In her memory and in her gratitude for the kindness you have done to me, for the kindness you have done me, I would do what I can for you. But alas, I do not know where those of Trollkine live. Oh, but alas, I do not know where those of Trollkine live. But perhaps her friend, the Snow Owl, would know of this place that you seek. And Nicholas answered his new friend. Then I must ask that creature my question. In what land does it live? And by what path can I arrive there? It is far, and far from here, but I will take you, if there you must go. I must. Then Nicholas looked at his daughter's hopeful face, and spoke again. If the Snow Owl knows the answer to this riddle, then we will seek it out, no matter the length of our journey. Whew, and I do be struggling with my words today. Maybe it's got something to do with the door being closed and it being stuffier than usual. I don't know. Gotta say though, I'm not feeling it. There are some stories that I get really into and feel, while I'm reading it as though I'm doing it the justice it deserves. But this one, I don't feel that way. Feels like my throat won't bring forth the voice that I want. I'm just being honest though. I thank you guys for listening though, regardless. And hope the story itself is intriguing and fun to listen to. The elk stood then before those two, its head and twisting antlers towering above even Nicholas's great height. Come, my back is strong enough for both. Sit upon me, and I will take you to the land that the Snow Owl calls home. For a day and night, and then another day, the great elk ran tirelessly across the deep snow-filled forest, bounding effortlessly over ice-covered streams, until the trees around them grew so close together that they choked out the sky. It was then that they knew they had reached the land that they sought, and it was as they began to pass through the dark of that dense wood that the elk at last opened its heart to Nicholas and his daughter and told them its sad tale. Once the great elk had been a prince in a land of humans, but that was long ago, so long that his kingdom had surely been swept away by time. An enchantment had transformed him into the beast they now rode upon. So long has it been that I've forgotten even my true name, or whose curse rendered me into this very form. Hearing the beast's tale, Both their hearts were greatly troubled. Soon thereafter, they came upon a small open glade untouched by winter, filled with the fragrance of fresh flowers and sweet grasses. In the center of that glade rose a great tree with pure white bark, hoary with age, but still living and still thriving. Upon every limb of that tree perched 100 snow-white owls, and each looked at their 3 uninvited guests and blinked but once by way of greeting. As one, they raised their voices and filled the small glade with their calls, making the very ground under the elk's hooves shudder. And before them, the tree awoke and trembled, and each of those owls became a feather on the wing of the great body and the tail of a single enormous white owl that silently looked down upon the small figures below it. The eyes of Nicholas and Morning Star then grew wide with amazement and with wonder, but the elk merely smiled and greeted the great owl. The Owl King, too, was saddened when he was told of Nessa's passing, and of the abduction of Nicholas's son, and of the fate of the elven daughters. Then, because of the deep and abiding friendship between the Troll King's daughter and the great owl, it too promised to do what it could to help Nicholas and his daughter Morningstar. Soon, seated astride the back of the snow owl, Morningstar looked down upon the stag that had brought them so far, and a single tear fell from her eye. "You will always have a place in my heart, Prince without a name." The great stag bellowed then in the frosty air. "Go now. I will follow as I may, for I am your companion now and forever." And so, the king of all owls flew with its 2 riders on its back, along secret paths, through the high snow-filled clouds, over razor-sharp mountains that thrust up out of the earth, and over twisting black rivers, and forests so thick that none could have found their way through unharmed. Finally, they arrived at the cave entrance that leads, for anyone so foolish as to enter it, down, 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 to the kingdom of the trolls. Eager to be about their promise and purpose, Nicholas and Morningstar climbed from the owl's back and entered that cave. But all they found there was emptiness, cold, lifeless, and dark. But when Nicholas set his ear to the floor of the enormous cavern, he heard deep below, through a vastness of stone and rock, a faint melody that a troll might play upon a fiddle. And he knew that somewhere far beneath their feet lay the palace of the king and queen of trolls, where his son was held captive. Knowing that they must find a way through the rock of that mountain, if ever they were to find Geordie, his heart despaired. Oh shoot, dude. I gotta know what happened. As they descend into the depths of the Troll King. Chapter 5. Then, when hope was at its bleakest, Nicholas felt a faint warm breeze stir in the dank cold of that immense, dark cavern. He took Morningstar's hand and followed that breath of air to an opening in the rock that lined the chamber. There they saw an arch of great, empty darkness rearing over their heads, and the air within it was blacker even than the dense shadows that kept it company on either side. They stepped then into that emptiness, and descended by 1,000 times, 1,000 steps, every one of them carved from the solid rock of the mountain. Down and down and down they went, past underground streams that illuminated the darkness with their faint luminescence, and under thundering waterfalls, and through limitless caverns, each vaster than the one before it, until they stood hard against yet another arched stone doorway. And there they peered carefully through it, and saw before them the court of the king and queen of the trolls, lit by as many reeking torches as were needed to light that vast space. Each torch was mounted on the side of a single column of stone that soared up to the vaulted ceiling far and far above. In the midst of that immense room were two thrones set atop a series of circular steps that towered above all else, save those columns. Indeed, everything in that court was roughly fashioned from a single piece of stone of the mountain itself, and no part was separate from the other. Gosh, that's so cool, man. That is so sick. Honestly, that is like what I aspire to achieve when it comes to describing environments as a DM. That's insane. Beautifully written and inspiring. Yeah, I was about to say. I was gonna mention it if you didn't, Remy. Banish him to the Shadow Realm, Jay. Yes, feels good. Thank you, Kingy. Thank you, Kingy. Tis banished. Tis banished. No longer will it reign in our Twitch chat. Our Twitch chat is saved. Once again. Thank you. But for real, that descriptor, man. Killer. Something to aspire towards. Upon those two high thrones sat the king and the queen of trolls. Below them there danced a multitude of creatures who named them their lord and lady. In the queen's own broad lap played young Geordie, and around him there were gathered elven, hideous troll maidens, waiting on the boy's every whim and bidding. Because through some arcane troll magic, Nicholas's son took those elven creatures for his true sisters, and laughed and smiled with them. Oh shoot. Thank you, Kingy. I'm glad that I can put a smile on your face. In great anger, Nicholas started across that space, but wise Morningstar calmly placed her hand on his arm and said to him soothingly, "Father, it will be better for both of us if you take this now. It will be better for both of us if you take this now." He looked then at his daughter and saw that she held, cupped in both her hands, the rune stone that set aside her wooden image and cloaked it with human flesh. "Please, Father, I fear that I fear what they will do to us out here in this savage kingdom. Place my wooden self alongside my sister's. Secret my stone around your neck and carry us all with you then, wherever you go from here." Nicholas saw the wisdom in his daughter's words and did as Morningstar had asked. Then, slipping the delicately woven bag under his clothes and fixing the rune stone upon the chain that he wore around his neck, he strode boldly out into the great cavern, into the midst of his enemies. Man, Santa's wearing a chain? Dude! Santa! Santa! Looking fly! I gotta say, I do love the image of just a 8 foot tall, buff as hell Santa strolling in to the palace throne room of a troll king and queen with his daughter's gem strapped around his neck on a chain, a great axe lugged upon his shoulder. I mean, picture that. Picture that and tell me that it doesn't put a it doesn't make you at least grin. Yo, they should have a basketball team. That'd be sick. You imagine the icy courts? Dude, what if they mixed ice skating and basketball? Huh? All I'm saying. They play ice skitball. Ice skitball? Ice basketball. Oh gosh. Everyone else is elves though. So they better have a good 3 shooting game. Dude, it's just Santa like continuously dunking on all of the elves. And all the elves are just kind of like every time he scores, they're like, "Oh, whoa, yeah. Way to go, Santa. You did it again. You got me good, man. Whoa. Good job." um, and they just kind of have to go along with it because Santa's their employer. Remy, you're not wrong. Ice skitball would be lethal. you know, maybe that wasn't such a good idea after all. And especially if it was this Santa Claus, the like young, uh, like stark black haired, bushy beard, axe wielding, buff as hell Santa. You just see him like with these 2 foot tall, uh, you know, worker elves towering above them. And then like one of them walks up and like is about to blow the whistle, but is just looking at the other elves, and the other elves are like, "No, no, just don't do it. Don't blow the whistle. We don't have to start the game." But then Santa looks down and says, "Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle, Terry." All right. Anyways, Santa's walking in. He's going to the foot of the throne of the king and queen of trolls. Destroying people and saying, "No foul, no foul, no foul." Come on, ref. the ref elf, or the ref, like maybe it's a reindeer. The ref reindeer's like, Santa, you're 8 feet tall. That in of itself is a foul. Come on. Honestly, yeah. Reindeer referee. Oh shoot, we don't got much time left. Think we can finish this chapter? Yeah. All right, we can. Nicholas, oh, even with his great strength, Nicholas was quickly subdued by the multitude of troll kind that filled that cavern. Oh man. And he was brought to the bottom of those rough stone steps that led unto the two thrones upon which the king and queen of trolls so calmly sat. The queen laughed at the stricken man held below her.
We have an unexpected, oh, excuse me, we have an expected visitor.
Nicholas used his great strength, then shook off the arms of his captors and cried out, Troll, I have come for my son! Still she smiled. And then the queen of all troll kind gestured at her lap and replied,
Do not see your son before you. He is happy and well content, is he not?
and Geordie did seem to be happy. But when Nicholas looked closer, he saw that hung about his son's small neck were the elven rune stones that belonged to the boy's true sisters, and hope sprang a sudden in his heart. Seeing where Nicholas looked, the queen reached down and took the stones from around the boy's neck and swallowed them, one by one. Great then was her pleased laughter when she looked upon the despair on the face of her enemy. She had Nicholas bound then in heavy chains by 3 huge troll creatures. All the while, Geordie laughed and played childish games with the elven, hideous troll companions. His only thoughts were for his imagined sisters, who smiled beside him and offered him plates that overflowed with sweet things and drinks that were most pleasing to a young boy. Nicholas cried out then to his son, thinking to warn the boy of the danger that was in that food. But Geordie's ears were closed to his father's cries. And so the boy took of all of those things, and ate and drank his fill, until liquid spilled down his cheeks, and cake fell across his leather jerkin. Nicholas remembered then the tale that the wise woman of his village had told him of the trolls, and despaired. For humans cannot eat troll food, nor drink of their drink, no matter the hunger that gnaws at their bellies, or the thirst that parches their throats, or they will never hunger again for what is grown in the lands where they were born. When the Queen of Trolls at last grew tired of taunting her guest, she ordered him taken from her.
Carry him away, and let him languish in a place of utter darkness, for so long as he shall yet live.
But before Nicholas could be led away, she reached out with her long, hairy arm and snatched from the golden chain hung around his neck the single rune stone that Nicholas's daughter, Morningstar, had given him. Holding that stone between thumb and forefinger, a sly smile crossed her wrinkled lips, and she spoke once again.
But it is not seemly to take a gift without one being returned in kind. Take you this knife, so that you may eat with it of the emptiness in the chamber in which you will live out the days left to you.
And so she handed Nicholas a small blunt blade fashioned from stone. And with it, her wild, wicked laughter echoed through the halls of her court. Nicholas was thrown then into the endless, empty cavern, where there was only darkness, and the cold greeted him and left him there, still bound in his chains. And the three enormous troll creatures who had brought him there rolled a great boulder across its entrance, the better to seal him within. Then, in that overwhelming darkness, he began to ply his small knife upon the locks of his chains, and was in time free of them. Little good that did him, still bound as he was by the stone walls of that vast chamber. Casting about in that place of utter darkness, he soon discovered a curious thing. From the ceiling far, far above him, a huge, shaggy root fell to the floor of the cavern and curled there at his feet. Standing in that utter darkness, he imagined the great oak tree that towered above the vast mountain of rock that held within the kingdom of trolls, and the cavern in which he had been cast. And further, he saw how its limbs spread upwards, flourishing toward the light of the sun. And from that imagining, his heart grew joyful once more. All right. Pardon me, I rushed through that last little bit because we must be going. Allow me to go ahead and run my little outro theme. Guys, Merry experiment that we found here together today. Let it set you at ease as you go forward with your day and doings, and let it carry you into tomorrow, all the way to Christmas and all the way to the new year. I'll see you next time, and give some love to the other streamers for me. I hope you enjoyed the stories. I've been the one, the only, Merry Mitch. Till next time.